going to try not to tell you more than you want to know, and rather I'd like to hear what you want to know. I'll try to talk for a little bit about the basic landscape of healthcare reform, and I'm interested to hear your questions and thoughts. Let's start with a little background. Where were we 5-10 years ago with healthcare in the U.S.? We're caught between two very different extreme views of the way forward on healthcare reform. One view on the left was that the way forward was a Canadian single-payer type system, a system where everyone would be entitled to health insurance coverage from birth, and where the government would control healthcare costs through a global budget. This has a lot to recommend it, a lot lower administrative costs for health insurance, lower healthcare cost growth, and obviously universal coverage. But really faces insurmountable political problems. We are never going to see a single-payer healthcare system in America. And the reason is twofold. First of all, most Americans like the health insurance they have. They wish it was cheaper, but most Americans who work for large corporations, which are people who have the majority of health insurance coverage, are pretty happy with it. And when you try to tell 200 million people who are happy that you're going to rip up what they have and throw it away and start over because there's 40 million people who are unhappy, that doesn't work in America. So that's one reason. The second reason is we have a health insurance industry that earns about $800 billion a year. And in America, we're not in the business of nationalizing $800 billion a year industries. We just don't make them go away. That doesn't happen. So for that reason, I think we spend a lot of time thinking about single payer as a benchmark, but it's really not time fruitfully spent. We should think more about realistic reforms. But that's sort of where we're stuck on the left. On the right, on the other hand, they said, okay, we understand we have to stick with the private market. What we can do is just give people tax credits to go buy health insurance. We've got a well-functioning private market. We'll just give people money to avail of that market. Well, the problem there is we don't have a well-functioning private market. We do for the majority of people have it, but for a very sizable minority, we do not have a well-functioning market. Because if you do not work for a large firm, you cannot get health insurance on a fair or just, to use the introductory term, basis. If you are an individual who's not offered employer-sponsored health insurance, you have to avail yourself, in most states, not Massachusetts, but most other states, of an incredibly unfair and discriminatory non-group insurance market, where in most states, if you've had health insurance for 10 years and been healthy, the minute you get cancer, they can drop you. Or if states say they can't drop you, they say, great, we're not dropping you. It's going to be $100,000 a month. Totally legal in the majority of states in America. People in America, most have insurance, but what we don't have is insurance for our insurance. We don't have the ability to ensure that if something strikes and we don't work for a large firm, our insurance will be there to cover us. And so if you take a 60-year-old with cancer, it doesn't matter if you give them a $2,000 tax credit or $5,000 tax credit or $10,000 tax credit, they can't get insurance. Okay? Mathematically, infinity minus 10,000 is still infinity. You just can't get insurance at any price if you're sick in America and you're in the non-group market. And so that doesn't solve the problem. And that's where we're stuck. Between the left, which had a solution that worked, but was politically infeasible, the right, which had a solution which was more feasible but did not solve the problem. And this led to an enormous amount of frustration and feeling that we just couldn't do health care reform. The joke I like to tell about that is the joke about the health policy expert who dies and goes to heaven. When he gets there, St. Peter says you can ask God one question. And he says to God, well, my question is, will there ever be universal health insurance coverage in America? And God says, yes, but not in my lifetime. So that, I think, sort of represents the pessimism that I think many felt about the prospects for health care reform. Until a breakthrough was made. And that breakthrough happened here in our home state of Massachusetts, where we really introduced, you often hear the concept of a third way. People talk about third way. Well, we really had a third way in Massachusetts, which was to recognize that the principle of what I call incremental universalism. What I mean by that is that incremental, not in the sense of small, but in the sense of building what works. Building on what works, to get to universal coverage. The principle is saying, look, we have a system which works for most people. Let's fill the gaps where it doesn't work. Let's not try to rip it up and start over. But let's recognize the fundamental reforms that are needed for the people for whom the system doesn't work. This is a concept which was really pioneered by Governor Romney, for which he deserves, as much as he tries to deny it, he deserves most of the credit. And then passed almost unanimously through the Massachusetts legislature, including with Representative Scott Brown's vote in April 2006. And the way that this bill works is it relies really on what I like to think of as a three-legged stool. The three legs of the stool are, first of all, to reform insurance markets so that individuals can get insurance at fair prices regardless of their health. In Massachusetts, you cannot be charged more for insurance because you're sick. You cannot be denied pre-existing conditions exclusions. None of that can happen. It's a reformed insurance market where people can be charged different prices in a limited range by age, but not by other health discrimination factors. So you fix the insurance market problem. The problem is if you do that by itself, it's a disaster. So let's do a little economics. Why is that? Well, think of yourself as an insurance company. And what you do as an insurance company in most states, the way you make your money is by and large by figuring out how to avoid the sick guys and insure the healthy guys. Figuring out, okay, if the sick guy comes, charging him a fortune or denying him. Well, now let's say you've got Gruber co-insurance, and the government says, well, you can't charge a sick guy anymore, and you can't deny care to anybody. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do one of two things. First of all, I'm going to quit. Or second of all, I'm going to say, well, gee, I'm going to charge a fortune because I don't know what I'm getting. I could get all these sick guys coming to me for insurance. I got to charge a fortune to cover myself. What happens? I charge a fortune. Well, who buys insurance when it costs a fortune? Only the sick. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So states that have tried, including Massachusetts, in 1996, that have tried to do this reform by itself, have destroyed their non-group markets. You can't do it. It doesn't work. Okay? 5 states tried this. There were 5 of the 8 most expensive states to buy health insurance in the country as a result. So that's why you need the second leg of the stool. The second leg of the stool is an individual mandate, a requirement that everyone buy health insurance. If everyone's buying health insurance, then Gruber co-insurance say, okay, fine. I know everyone's going to buy, so I know the price will be fair. I can set the price at the population average, and I'm good. So if there's a mandate, it solves the problem. It's what we call adverse selection problem of only the sick buying and prices going through the roof. The problem is you can't mandate people buy health insurance without helping them out. The typical family health insurance policy in Massachusetts, we passed a law in 2006, was about $13,000. We couldn't tell someone earning $25,000 that they had to spend $13,000 on health insurance or pay a penalty or go to jail or whatever. Okay? That's just not just. It's just not fair. So the third leg of the stool has to be subsidies to make health insurance affordable. You have to subsidize low-income, really up to middle-income people to make health insurance affordable. The key point is you need all 3 legs. You can't do insurance market reform without a mandate. You can't have a mandate without subsidies. There's no way to make it work without